All right, Improvisation Center is back again with the Scion again, and as you can see, a busted out sunroof window. Now, we're not going to get into any specifics, but let's just say a dump truck and a rock and a busted window. Enough said. But yeah, while we wait to see what their insurance and all is going to do about it, in the meantime, I need to take care of this busted open hole because this goes inside. And if it rains, the inside of the car is going to be wet to hell. So in the meantime, what I am going to need to do is get all this busted glass out of here because, well, I can't do shit until all this busted glass is gone. Now, what I'm trying to think of as far as improvisation, since we got to wait to see what happens, is I'm probably going to see how this whole thing goes together and see if it's possible to cut a piece of plexiglass that will fit in place on this thing and for all intents and purposes just not really use the sunroof. But yeah, first things first, get all this damn busted glass out of here. Yeah, shit sucks. Yeah, you little bat. All right, managed to get the sunroof window frame off. It's only held down by 6 bolts, 3 on either side. And I also managed to scrape all the broken glass off of the metal frame. You can also see that there is a bead of glue all the way around that held the glass down. And by the way this whole thing looks, I should be able to measure and cut a piece of plexiglass to fit in the essentially rectangular hole on the roof of the car. And I could go ahead, bolt the thing down. I might have to do a little trimming here and there after gluing the piece of plexiglass down, but once the frame is mounted, I should be good to go. The only issue I might have is this piece of glass right here. It's spring loaded, and this actually gets pushed down by the sunroof itself. So I would have to see what kind of grades of plexiglass they have as far as stiffness and all. But the plexiglass will work out in the sense that it's easily bent, and you can see there's a curvature to this frame here, so I should be able to glue the whole thing down and probably get by pretty good. So next move is going to be to get all this glue off of this frame and of course get a piece of plexiglass. So that'll be next. All right, the solution that I ended up having to settle upon, as you can see here, is a couple pieces of sheet metal. The reason why is because even though we were talking about the plexiglass idea, The prices of plexiglass are ridiculous, and you're not really getting anything of any substance either. It's relatively thin plexiglass at that. By the time I got done, I could have just went ahead and bought a whole nother sunroof from a junkyard car if I found one. And because we're trying to get somebody else to pay for this shit, it doesn't make any sense for me to go and spend any amount of money for all intents and purposes to try to do a temporary patch. So if we're going to do something that is going to be temporary, it's going to try to be as low cost, if not free, as possible. Now, outside of some adhesive to glue our cover to the frame that we cleaned off, that's about the only cost that I'm really incurring right now, because this sheet metal that's sitting on the ground, butted together with a welding cable hooked up to it, is free from my stash. So, yep, I'm gonna weld this sheet metal together to provide a panel long enough to cover the span, and then trim it to fit and glue the shit in place, and probably shoot some spray paint on it just to make it look a little bit decent since the car is black, and from there be done with it. So yeah, bootleg like a son bitch. Alright, got the two panels welded together. I mean, it's not the best of the best, but it's gonna work. And this thin sheet metal is a pain in the ass to weld with any welder, even these little Cracker Jack box welders here, because thin ass sheet metal is like paper. You literally burn clean through it as soon as you strike an arc. So you got to be real particular, I guess, with the way you hit the arc and hold the arc and move the gun around, so you don't stay in one spot too long, which in this case too long is like literally a half a second. So had to kind of carefully go over this, and in some cases had to fill in some holes that did get burned into the metal, but it's all together. So now do a little grinding on this. This is going to actually be the inside of the setup anyway, so this won't be as visible compared to the outside. We'll figure out how we're going to do the outside. Just have to flip it over and see what it looks like. But in the meantime, I need to cut this panel out to fit, and I'm probably going to use this seam as a center point, so at least even with a visible seam, it'll look somewhat symmetrical, I guess. Still bootleg as a son bitch, but yeah. Well, changed my mind again. This is going to be the outside, because between the two, this side of the seam is actually in better shape. As even after grinding it down, everything is not as bad on this side as it is on that side. It's a little shittier looking, and besides, we got all this rusty surface here that I'll just have to cover up with more paint. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with this side here, because I mean, this side ain't bad, but it's more of a pronounced seam compared to this side right here. You know, you got a bit of a ridge in some spots, but yep, like I said, bootleg like a son bitch. All right, took our measurements, chopped off the excess on either side. So now I could actually try to test fit this thing so I could trim it on the front and back, and then we can go ahead and start gluing this shit onto the frame and try to get this thing wrapped up. after applying the glue, had to hold down this spring-loaded panel right here that's glass, lay down the sheet metal on top of the bead of glue, then immediately open the sunroof to a position where the spring-loaded window frame won't be pushing up on the edges of the sheet metal, as well as the rubber weather stripping under there. I want to have it up in a position where I can apply good pressure all the way around so the glue bead can seal. Of course, that means leaving this thing open because I want this stuff to sit long enough that it's going to be nice and down. But yeah, got the glue down, let this shit sit. I did, of course, take time to paint it, as you could clearly see. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than a semi-rusty, shitty-looking panel. Of course, look up under there. I do have some little pinholes in the weld that probably have to fill those in with some caulk or hot glue or whatever. But all that is minor compared to getting this panel down. Now, hopefully after this shit seals and I do put the sunroof back down, one of two things does not happen. One, our spring-loaded window thing pulls this thing up by the edges. And of course, two, this thing doesn't interfere so badly that it won't go down, and I end up having to do some other shit like cutting out notches right here to accommodate the frame pieces right here. Main thing is, as long as we're on the weather stripping, we should be good either way. But one step at a time. Let's let this shit sit, let the glue cure, and hope for the best, because we are definitely in uncharted territory. Uncharted bootleg territory. Right now, just putting weight on these edges here in order to help the thing sit nice and flush against the surface, the frame surface, so as the glue dries, there won't be any large gaps. The other side is actually sitting pretty good. It's just this side here that's giving me a little headache, so had to add some weight to it in order to help push it down nice and flush against the frame. So I'm gonna let this shit sit a while I tend to some other business around here. So I will be back soon enough. All right, we got our panel on. We allowed it to sit overnight, despite the fact that it's raining like a motherfucker out here. But anyway, we found a brief moment to actually run up to the garage with this thing so we could get some shelter. But after the thing was allowed to sit overnight with some weight on it to make sure it stayed down flat on the frame, was able to move it like a normal sunroof. Little flaws here and there, but I mean, hey, we are in bootleg territory, so you're gonna have to expect flaws. But I had to trim some of the metal along these corners right here because of this. The old glass would have actually pressed down on that to smush that down flat, but because we don't have a thick layer of tempered glass to put that kind of force down on here, sheet metal that's like 1/16 of an inch thick is not going to cut it. So I chopped it off on both sides right there so the sunroof will open and close like normal, independent of this thing here. And it's probably just as well that this thing is staying up too, because along this seam right here where the weather stripping's at, it's not perfectly sealing, especially right here in the middle. So this piece of glass right here can actually help deflect any rain that you run into. And along the rest of the edges, I mean, it's down, it's not perfect. I'll probably have to bend it a little bit. But going inside along the seam right there, I had to fill it in with some hot glue because of the simple fact that there are little pinholes in there. And like I say, simple bootleg solution, put some hot glue in the little pinholes to help seal it up. Again, all this shit is temporary, because if we're going to try to get somebody to pay for fixing this damn thing, it doesn't make any sense for us to spend any money doing something temporary. Or even in the worst case, if I end up having to replace this thing out of pocket, it still doesn't make sense to spend any money on temporary shit while looking for a replacement glass. So yep, our makeshift bootleg sunroof is in, and for all intents and purposes, it more or less matches the car because it's been spray painted black anyway. So if you didn't know any better, you'd probably be like, it's just a sunroof. Okay, so say what you will, functionality, while tacky and bootleg, it is practical. So I am done. It is still raining out here. Gonna get back in the house and sit in the house because it's raining outside. So till the next time, hit the like and subscribe and notifications and all the good stuff so you'll know when I'm back again. I will catch you later.